Claude Monet, the French painter who led Impressionism, lived in Giverny and turned his garden into his personal studio. Since the late 1890s, he kept painting the pond with water lilies over and over, capturing the light and the changing seasons until he passed away in 1926. In 1941, while the U.S. was still coming out of the Great Depression and the war was getting closer, people from all over headed down to Sarasota, Florida, and packed the city's trailer park. There, they had picnics, played games, and held simple dances, a cheap way to enjoy the sunshine and forget their worries. Many came in trailers, those so-called tin can tourists. In the spring of 1865, as the Civil War was coming to an end, black workers returned to the old battlefield of Cold Harbor, Virginia, to gather bones and remains of soldiers from 1864, trying to give a proper ending to a fight that had left bodies exposed for months. A tough task, but one seen as an act of respect for the war's dead. That February in 1954, Marilyn Monroe left her honeymoon in Japan and headed to South Korea, right in the middle of the cold, to sing for tens of thousands of American soldiers. It was a government effort to keep morale up after the war, and her presence became the talk of the 4-day tour across the forward bases near the border. And if you like digging up these kinds of backstage stories from history, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. I've got a bunch more coming. Marilyn Monroe, born Norma Jean on June 1, 1926 in Los Angeles, became a phenomenon by stringing together Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, The 7-Year Itch, and Some Like It Hot. Caught between rigid contracts and a manufactured image, she sought more autonomy. Her death in 1962 cemented the icon. In 1905, Coney Island in Brooklyn was buzzing with electric light and noise. 3 parks, Steeplechase, Luna Park, and Dreamland, sold the promise of the new century with roller coasters, variety shows, and tricks. On the street, Feltman served hot dogs along with popcorn and cotton candy, feeding crowds of workers and tourists. Johnny Cash, born in 1932 in Arkansas, blended country, folk, gospel, and rock. He became the Man in Black, sang about the hard side of life, and locked in I Walk the Line and Ring of Fire. He recorded at Folsom Prison, worked with June Carter, and came back strong in the 1990s. He died in 2003. His voice bridged styles and inspires artists today. In December 1936, anyone stopping on the George Washington Bridge could see Manhattan glowing golden at the end of the day, the calm Hudson, and growing traffic. Opened on October 25, 1931, the bridge connected Washington Heights to Fort Lee and boasted the world's longest suspension span at the time, a work by Othmar Ammann. It didn't yet have the second level, which was only completed in 1962. In 1900, hailing a rental car in New York meant calling for a livery straight from the stable, a coachman, iron wheels, and a fare per mile. There had been a few electric cars on the streets since 1897, but not many. Gas-powered ones only took off around 1907, when Harry N. Allen launched his fleet with taximeters and standardized the service for rides. Paulette Goddard became a big name in Hollywood, with more than 40 films to her name. She met Charlie Chaplin around 1932, and their partnership turned into a romance. In 1936, the two claimed to be married, though the record is disputed. They starred together in Modern Times and The Great Dictator before divorcing in 1942. The uncertainty didn't slow down her career. When they were young, Elizabeth and Margaret were inseparable. They slept in the same room, put on shows at home, and learned etiquette for a future that only the older sister was destined for. Elizabeth, trained for the crown, became the center of the family. Margaret, witty and rebellious, became the glamorous counterpoint under the post-war spotlight. No rivalry. On April 16, 1947, in Texas City, the French cargo ship SS Grand Camp, loaded with ammonium nitrate, caught fire and exploded. The shockwave was felt for miles, sparking fires at nearby refineries and triggering another explosion from the SS High Flyer. Hundreds were killed, and the city was covered in debris and smoke for hours. Sharon Tate was born in Dallas on January 24, 1943. The daughter of a military officer, she moved around a lot as a child. Started out as a model, and in the 60s headed to Los Angeles in search of acting roles. She soon appeared on TV and in films and became one of Hollywood's rising stars, especially with Valley of the Dolls, before her fame was tragically cut short in 1969 at age 26. The 1917 photo shows an American Red Cross pilot on duty, at a time when the war demanded a quick response. The organization worked in medical relief, transporting the wounded and providing humanitarian aid to soldiers and civilians, bringing help to places where the fighting left deep scars and where trained professionals could save lives. This 1953 image captures Audrey Hepburn behind the scenes of Sabrina, at a time when her understated elegance was beginning to redefine the Hollywood star standard. With delicate features and a confident presence, she combined talent, charm, and naturalness in front of the camera, solidifying the legend that would define her entire career and inspire generations. And if you like digging up these kinds of backstage stories from history, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. I've got a bunch more coming. The 1918 photo shows two women pushing a wheelbarrow loaded with blocks of ice, a valuable commodity before electric refrigeration became widespread. They made sure families and businesses could keep food fresh in the summer, showing how this physical labor was essential to urban life and the local economy. This 1947 photograph captures Times Square still in its post-war phase, already filled with bright billboards, movie theaters, and heavy traffic. The intersection served as a showcase of New York modernity, drawing locals and visitors looking for entertainment, new trends, and the lively atmosphere of the city's transforming heart. The photo, titled "Easter Eggs for Hitler," captures a symbolic act of opposition to the Nazi regime during World War II. By using an apparently simple gesture to mock the dictator, the participants showed that humor and creativity could also serve as tools of political and moral resistance, even in times of censorship. On April 16, 1912, newsboy Ned Parfit is seen on the street selling the evening paper with the major coverage of the Titanic disaster. The photo became a historical document because it shows, in everyday London life, the immediate impact of one of the greatest maritime tragedies ever reported, shocking readers across the country and beyond. The photo, titled "Portrait Used to Design the Coin," President Lincoln meets General McClellan in September 1862, captures a memorable encounter from the American Civil War. Decades later, this portrait served as the model for the 1909 1-cent coin, the first U.S. coin to feature a president on the obverse, honoring Lincoln. The 1942 scene shows Sergeant George Cambler training with a gas mask while walking through a smokescreen. The image highlights how, during World War II, the Army invested in realistic drills to prepare soldiers to face chemical attacks and other combat situations that could arise on the front lines. On July 8, 1942, in New York City, volunteers gathered to paint World War II propaganda posters. These workshops were part of a government strategy to mobilize civilians, boost patriotism, and persuade the population to contribute with resources, labor, and direct support to the ongoing war effort both at home and abroad. Around 1946, trumpeter Louis Armstrong was photographed rehearsing in his dressing room. The image shows the musician in a moment of focus, fine-tuning tone and phrasing. This kind of photo helps explain why he became a jazz icon and brought the genre to ever wider audiences in and beyond the U.S. for decades. Around 1935 in San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge was built, connecting the city to the marine area. The project stood out in civil engineering for the boldness of its span and the scenery over the bay. Over time, the monument gained worldwide status, becoming a postcard image and a symbol of the union between technique and landscape, admired by visitors. In 1957, Marilyn Monroe posed for one of the most memorable photos of her career. By then, she was already a dominant name in Hollywood, combining charisma, beauty, and screen presence. The photo captured her mature phase and helped cement the image of a star whose influence has spanned generations, and continues to shape film and pop culture today. In the early 20th century, between 1900 and 1915, Broadway at the United States Hotel in Saratoga Springs, New York, bustled with visitors. The city was famous for its mineral springs and its luxurious hotels and spas. Those who passed through found leisure, treatments, and a lively social scene that drew travelers from all over the country, especially in the summer. In 1919, the giant cowboy Madsen, who stood over 2 meters tall and performed in circuses and events, was photographed next to Senator Morris Shepherd. The scene drew attention for the contrast in height and for the public's fascination with eccentric figures, who were highly sought after by the traveling entertainment of the time and featured in newspapers. On August 20, 1924, ballerinas from the National American Ballet were photographed during a performance in the United States. The company, founded in 1923, sought to establish its own repertoire and showcase refined technique. The image reflects this effort to assert a national dance identity before a growing audience that appreciated the art form. In 1921, German physicist Albert Einstein was photographed at a decisive moment in his scientific career. By that time, his ideas on relativity had already placed him among the great names in world science, and the image captures the phase when his prestige and influence were becoming firmly established among the public, colleagues, and institutions. In 1919, activist Helen Keller met actor and filmmaker Charlie Chaplin, a rare encounter that brought together two global figures of the early 20th century. The photo captures not just cordiality, but also symbolizes how both became icons in different fields, leaving a powerful mark on their era and inspiring generations to come. The photograph, Boys After Buying Easter Flowers in Union Square, New York, April 1908, shows boys in New York just after buying Easter flowers. The image reveals the city's early 20th century energy and brings viewers closer to everyday life, shaped by street commerce, youthful curiosity, and the small urban rituals of the time.